Hey guys, welcome back to another video, and in today's video we're doing the Shrine of Secrets review for the 12th of September 2023. I'm sorry that I've missed it again this week. I'm back at uni now, so what I think I'm going to try and do is just try and make sure I at least get the review out at some point, because as you may notice, I have a tendency to just not upload them, and then the people ask where they are and everything like that, and I think I'm just going to try and do it so even if I'm late, like I am this week, I want to try and at least just get the review out, because even if it's late, at least it's up and people can still watch them if they want. Um, it's just hard to be like on time with it, because for me it changes like Tuesday evening, which is not a good time for me at all, and then Wednesday I'm just busy, or I'm just doing, or I just forget. Sometimes I honestly just forget, but I will try and make sure, like I said, that I'm going to try and at least get them out every week, even if they're late. I want to try and make sure they're at least up on the channel for you guys. So without further ado, let's get started. First of all, we have Hex the Third Seal, which is a hag perk, and this is a Hex perk, which means it's tied to a totem, and if that totem is cleansed, then this perk is gone. So every time you hit a survivor with a basic attack or a special attack while the Hex is active, it applies the blindness status effect permanently to that survivor. And if you manage to hit all 4 survivors at some point, they all become permanently blind until the Hex is cleansed. So I think that with this perk, it's really good against survivors that can't communicate, mainly solo queue. I don't know what the percentage of survivors that play solo queue is, but I feel like I play against solo queue players a lot. You can normally tell when it's a team. Sometimes they use the same outfits or skins, and sometimes they switch to characters last second and they just kind of follow each other around. But I feel like if you play against solo queue, this perk is actually pretty good because there's no way for them to communicate. Blindness does mean everything, obviously gens and stuff, but I think the main point of this perk is that you can't see teammates. If you slug someone, they can't see where they are at all. If you hook someone and they don't see the bubble, they don't know where they are at all. And actually, I think it's, you can still see killer objectives. I'm not entirely sure, but I think maybe things like jigsaw boxes and pools of devotion and stuff like that, I think you may still be able to see them, but I'm not 100% sure. It doesn't say anything about that in this description, but I'm not entirely sure. But anyway, yes, I think against solo queue it's definitely more effective because they can't communicate and they have to basically spend their time looking for the hex if they want to be able to like play the game regularly, pretty much. However, you do have to try and hit everyone. If you get 3 survivors hit, there's still someone who can still see auras, and if they have things like detective touch, they can see where the totems are and they can get rid of your totem quickly. So bear things like that in mind. But I think this perk's decent. I don't think it's anything like amazing. I think against solo queue it is actually pretty good because it kind of just decimates them anyway. But I think against a team or just survivors that can talk and in comms or just coordinated, then I think it kind of doesn't work. And you probably need to use this with Undying as well because it is a Hex perk. Next up, we have Deadlock, which is a Cenobite perk, and this perk has, so every time a generator is completed, the next generator with the most progress is blocked for 30 seconds, and you can see its white aura during that time period. So a generator gets completed, and whichever gen has the most progress after that is going to get blocked. And 30 seconds is really nice, actually. 30 seconds, it does force survivors off gens the same way like Dead Man Switch does. And it is the same blocking as like Repressed Alliance. It's like the big tentacles on it. So I feel like it is really good in those kind of situations, especially if it's a game that you're kind of losing. It does buy you at least 30 seconds where they can't work on that gen. However, a problem that I've noticed when I use this perk is that, say you have a generator with 80% progress and you have over 70% progress. And then say there's a third gen that gets finished. The gen with 80% is going to get blocked for 30 seconds. But if there's a survivor working on the generator with 70%, that's going to now overtake that gen. And that gen is now going to be the one with most progress. Does that make sense? So even though you are blocking your generator that's like, close to getting done, if there's other survivors on other gens, which is probably likely and bound to happen at some point, then that generator is going to become the new what's it called, generator with most progress, and then that generator is going to get done and you're going to be confused saying, wait, what, I had deadlock, it blocked the generator with the most progress, because yes, the survivor, especially if they're split up, that means there's loads of other gens that are getting loads of progress. And it's great that that one generator with 80% is blocked, but the other ones are about to get more than 80%. Does that make sense? I feel like I explained that weirdly, but basically, yes, this perk is kind of flawed in that sense. And then it's going to end up blocking a generator that's got like, no survivors on it, and the other survivors on those other generators are now going to get those generators done. Does that make sense? I also don't know what happens if a generator gets finished within the 30 seconds that is blocked. I don't think it blocks a second generator. I don't think it works like that, but I honestly don't know. I don't know if it just kind of cancels itself out or, I don't know, adds time to the pre-existing generator that's blocked. I don't know. But the point is, this perk is decent. It works what it does, but I think it does have some kind of main flaws like that, which I think you might notice if you start using it more. Next up, we have Self-Preservation, which is a Yunjin Lee perk. This is another really weird niche perk. I'll explain it now. Basically, whenever another survivor within 60 meters of you gets hit by any attack, your scratch marks, pools of blood, and your grunts of pain get hidden for 10 seconds, which is great. You know, it's nice. But if the survivor gets injured by the killer, chances are the killer's going to stay on that survivor. So the fact that your scratch marks and everything are hidden doesn't really help because the killer's not looking for you. They're probably just going to stick to the chase of that person. And if they do come after you, then they can see you anyway, if that makes sense. So what happens is the fact that you have no scratch marks or pools of blood or anything doesn't really matter because if they can see you and they can see your survivor, it doesn't matter if they can't see your scratch marks or hear your grunts of pain because they know where you are, if that makes sense. It's kind of my problem with like Beast of Prey, which hides the red stain. It's a great effect, but survivors can still see where the killer is around corners and stuff. And I know obviously skilled killers will obviously use not having a red stain to their advantage and stuff like that. But the point is like you can still see where the giant killer is, you know what I mean, around like corners and stuff. So yeah, I feel like it's kind of flawed. I feel like this is a perk that you're supposed to kind of use like when you're being healed or healing, or like if you're on a generator and you're injured, and you don't want the killer to find you. And I kind of get it for that sense, but I still feel like, as I mentioned, it's kind of flawed either way. If the killer decides to go after that survivor that they injured or downed, then they'll probably just stick to them. But if they do come after you, the fact that everything gets hidden for 10 seconds does not matter at all. So I think this perk's pretty flawed in my opinion. Finally, we have Background Player. I think this was on before. I think I've talked about this before, but I can't remember. That might have been one of Talita's perks. But anyway, this is a Renato perk, and every time the killer picks up another survivor, this perk activates for 10 seconds. And if you start to run during the 10 seconds, you get a 150% speed boost for 4 seconds, and then you become exhausted. So basically, it's a sprint burst that you can kind of trigger anytime the survivor gets picked up by the killer. That can be off the floor, out of a locker, anything, as long as they're on the killer's shoulder by the end of it. Then you have a 10-second window. And obviously, the cool thing is that you don't have to use that. Like, sometimes when I use this perk, like, you could be on a generator, you can be healing a survivor. You don't have to use that 10 seconds. Like, you can just let it pass and just wait for another survivor to get picked up. And then when you do, you get a free sprint burst, basically. So I actually quite like it in that sense. I feel like the point of this perk is that you're supposed to use it with, like, a flashlight or a toolbox or breakout, and you're supposed to use that speed boost to obviously run up to that picked up survivor and flashlight blind the killer with that speed boost, or use the speed boost to sabotage a hook, kind of things like that really. But I think you can just, honestly, to be honest, I use this perk as kind of like a sprint burst that you can kind of just choose when to use it, because it's not like actual sprint bursts where you have to try and just walk around and not use it. Like, you can still run around normally anytime, and then you can choose during that 10-second window if you want to use that sprint burst or not. And obviously you can use that speed boost obviously to get flashlight blinds and saves and breakout value and stuff like that. Or if you're like me, you can just use that to get a free sprint burst every once in a while to get to the next generator or get to the hook survivor, whatever. So I actually quite like it. It's got a lot of versatility. I've been using it a lot, and I feel like I said, it's got a bunch of different diverse uses. So I actually quite like that about this perk. It doesn't rely on anything else. Like I said, you can bring a flashlight, a toolbox, breakout, whatever the perk, saboteur, whatever. But you can just use it by itself and just get speed boosts every so often. So that's how I like to use it. I would say actually that one is probably the most worth to buy, because I think it's just kind of like a sprint burst, but kind of better in a sense, because you can't use it all the time, but you can at least like run around still. You don't have to just walk everywhere to conserve your sprint burst. You can just run around. Deadlock, I also will say, because like I said, it is good at what it does. That 30 seconds really does help. I just think you have to be careful of that thing I mentioned where, it does block the generator the most progress, but it doesn't stop other generators from getting more progress. And you might end up with like a snowballing situation where like 3 generators keep getting done after one one after the other. I can't talk. Okay. Guys, I'm going to leave it there. Hope you enjoyed. Hope you found this useful, and I'll see you in the next one.